Hi, Terry here, answering another question from the health and wellness class. So, this question is I have a hard time losing weight. Is it possible that my hormones are an issue, or is it just that my calorie intake and choices are too much? This is a great question, very timely. And I just want to acknowledge that losing weight and keeping it off is very challenging. And there are certain things that make it more challenging. Our bodies make it more challenging for us to lose weight and keep it off. And I'm going to talk about those. But I hope to leave you with some inspiration and motivation that it is possible to lose weight and keep it off. And there's certain behaviors and habits that we can adopt that will help get us through that. And so hormones in and of themselves are not going to block us from achieving those goals. And it's usually some behavioral things that we can do to help get us to where we want to go. Okay, so first off, the short answer on the hormone question is that hormones do influence body weight and weight loss. But for most people, they're not the primary reason they can't lose weight. And right now, especially, social media is often exaggerating that role. So the main factor is calories, and I'll talk a little bit at the end about some strategies or some tips on reducing your calories in a way to create a deficit to help you lose body fat and keep it off. But we're going to talk about the hormone issue first, and then we'll bring that up at the end. Okay, so there are several hormones that do affect your metabolism, your appetite, and where fat is stored. I'm going to briefly cover each one without really going into the weeds. So insulin is one, and that's one that's kind of gotten a lot of media attention recently in the past. And your body has natural insulin spikes after meals. The hormone of insulin is involved in when you have an increase in your blood sugar levels after a meal. Insulin comes out, grabs the blood sugar, and stores it away. It's a normal, healthy process. There are people that have issues with insulin, specifically type 1 diabetics. That's outside of this, that they're going to get help through their medical professional. But for the general people, that's normal. You can lose body fat even when you have those normal insulin spikes. So that hype is, you can let go of that. Okay, leptin. This one is a factor here. So leptin signals fullness. Okay, and long-term energy store. So when you lose weight, leptin decreases, making you hungrier and making it harder to maintain weight loss. And I call this like your body's like natural urge, what it says, always trying to maintain, homeostasis or like a thermostat trying to maintain your weight. And so when you do start to lose that weight, your body is kind of like trying to get you to eat more so that you don't lose that weight. So you keep that weight on. So it's making you hunger, which makes it a little bit harder to lose weight. Ghrelin also is another hormone. It's considered like the hunger hormone, and it also tends to increase when you're dieting. So that's one reason why weight loss is challenging. Like I mentioned, is that once you initiate that weight loss through a reduction in calories, your body is almost trying to like fight you to eat and be hungry more and not feel full and want to eat a little bit more. So those are the two things that we have to kind of counterbalance through our behaviors. Thyroid hormones are actually a big one. They regulate our metabolic rate. But as long as someone has healthy thyroid levels, which most people do, there are people that have true low thyroidism, and that can reduce their energy expenditure. And that's something that you're going to go to your medical professional, your physician, and you can get a thyroid test and check your those levels and see if there's any issues going on there. That's outside of this particular talk, but your thyroid hormones do play a role in your metabolism. Then we have estrogen and progesterone. It's getting a lot of talk lately. They influence appetite, fluid retention, body fat distribution, and energy levels. And during perimenopause and menopause, and I'm 52, I'm in it, it's declining estrogen is associated with an increase in abdominal fat and a slight reduction in energy expenditure. So again, as women age and they're going through those perimenopause and menopause, that they might have to work harder at increasing their exercise, making sure they're keeping that lean muscle mass on to help with their metabolism and expending more energy through exercise, and then maybe reducing their calories a little bit more because of that slight decline in their metabolic rate from the declining levels of estrogen. And then finally, cortisol, and that's another one that's just giving so much hype in the media. And we have natural, normal spikes in cortisol throughout the day in our body. That is even when we exercise, wake up in the morning, those types of things. We don't need to get into the weeds on that, but there are ways that we can behavioral that can impact our cortisol levels, and that's managing stress. So chronic stress can play a role, or poor sleep. So the behavioral things that we can do is just making sure we have healthy sleep habits and getting plenty of sleep. That can impact our ability to be successful with our health related goals when we're not sleeping. And then also managing our stress, which, I mean, obviously, above and beyond, our cortisol levels are an important factor overall for our health and well-being. So but the effect of cortisol is really more behavioral than it is metabolic. So that's just something to keep in mind. So the research is showing, yes, hormones can affect all those hormones I just listed: hunger, satiety, food cravings, energy levels, daily movement, resting metabolic rate. However, it doesn't completely override the laws of energy balance. So instead, it influences how easy or difficult it is to create and maintain that energy balance, or create and maintain that calorie deficit that you're trying to accomplish, so that you are losing weight and keeping it off, or losing body fat and keeping it off. So another question people often ask is my metabolism broken? Am I suffering from a low metabolism? And time after time, when they test regular healthy people, that is not the case. They have not lost their metabolism. It's not broken. It's not severely lower than anyone else's metabolism. But what can be a factor is your resting metabolic rate, or that's the amount of calories you're burning at rest. Like if you laid in bed all day, all night, and how many calories it take just to sustain your body, that actually reduces with age, but that reduction is largely associated with reducing or a loss of muscle mass, which happens as we age. So a great way to counter that is to do resistance training and keep your muscle mass up as you age. Menopause itself contributes a relatively small decrease in metabolism. So again, we talked about those other ways to counterbalance that slight decrease. Make sure you're doing resistance training, getting that muscle mass up, doing aerobic exercise, or just regularly being more physically active all throughout the day, not just the exercise. That's healthy in itself, but just being more active. And then also you might have to watch your calories a little bit more, not overeat as much and reduce those calories. Let me turn that off real quickly. Okay. There we go. All right. So the bigger challenges for most people, instead of focusing on, metabolism, is just we're doing less physical activity. So we got to keep that up. Loss of muscle and increased hunger, which can happen with that ghrelin and leptin. Poor sleep and lifestyle changes. So those are all things that we can work on, right? Okay, so there is cases when hormones are truly the issue that's causing problems, and those are medical conditions. So untreated hypothyroidism, Cushing syndrome, polycystic ovary syndrome. So there's certain medical conditions that can impact, and those are things that you're going to want to go to your physician, run the test, and find that out. But typically those situations are much less common than social media might suggest. So usually it's about our healthy habits and lifestyle, and doesn't have to do with the medical condition. But if that's the case, you want to go to your physician and get that diagnosed and treated. So why is hormone focused marketing so popular right now? And this is the case with, media and generally over time. There's always something that we're focused on and hyping up. And so right now it's, balancing your hormones to help you lose weight, or your cortisol's making you fat, or insulin, and, all these things they want to kind of point the finger at, this is to blame why you're having trouble losing weight and keeping it off. And again, the reality is, unless someone's diagnosed with an endocrine disorder, there's rarely a single hormone that needs to be fixed and is deterring your efforts of losing weight and keeping it off. So the general takeaway is that my recommendation is that as you age, you just need to pay closer attention into making sure that you're regularly exercising. And the person that actually submitted this question said, I exercise most days of the week, walking 30 minutes to an hour. I do 2 to 3 days of resistance training or Pilates. All of that, that's the way to go. Keep that up. Whatever it is exercise you like, do that exercise, do it frequently, do the cardiovascular exercise most days of the week. Get that resistance training in 2 to 3 days a week, and keep that up. And that's going to help with your metabolism. That's going to help with your keeping your lean muscle mass up. That's going to keep with your mental health. It's going to help with your sleep. It's going to help you with your stress. So all of those things are going to be healthy in and of themselves and helping you maintain a healthy weight. But the key factor is the calories. And the key with reducing your calories to initiate a weight loss is you can do it however you want. That's your business, how you reduce your calories. So you just find a way, whatever you're eating every single day on average is enough to sustain your current weight. So if you want to lose weight, you got to find a way to cut back, and how you do that, whatever works for you is what works for you. So we're cutting back, and we're helping to initiate that fat loss through that deficit. The key is not to cut back too extreme. And that's where the diets that are out there tend to be really extreme, where you cut back super low calorie. And then that initiates all those things in your body to try to fight that loss, because it's going to make you want to hunger. It's going to try to, fight the famine, fight the crops that failed, try to get you to eat more to help get your weight back up to where it needs to be. So the key is to just take a little bit out, something that's sustainable. Take a little bit out throughout your day. I talked about it in the last question, which was about intermittent fasting, that you could just cut back on your portions. You can cut back on your caloric beverages. You can try to choose healthier options, like more nutrient dense option like whole foods versus more processed foods, or less fast food. I mean, it could be something just as simple as that. And that's something that you can sustain and do every single day for the rest of your life. So those results will show up every single day for the rest of the life. And you don't have to be extreme and controlling and starving and not enjoy your life. There's another strategy that's really popular that I employ myself, which is the 80-20 rule. And that's like 80% of the time you're eating, healthy choices, all those things that we already know that's, considered healthy eating. And 20% of the time you let yourself have, the extra fun stuff that, may not be considered like ultimate health, but you're finding that balance so that it's sustainable over time, so that you can lose that weight and keep it off. And slow and steady wins the race, meaning don't try to lose it all in 1 month. That's the actions and behaviors that you have to do to get the extreme weight loss that quickly are not sustainable. They're not realistic to hold on to. So what happens is we start into the extreme, we lose in the extreme, and then the body's fighting to get us back up. Versus if we find ways that we can cut calories to help slowly reduce our weight, usually those strategies are more lifestyle behaviors. They're more sustainable. They're more realistic to keep up with. And then whatever weight we lose, we're able to sustain that, because the behaviors that we chose to lose that weight are behaviors that we can keep up with every single day for the rest of our lives. So keep at it. It is challenging because of all those reasons we talked about, but it's not impossible. And so the key is to keep doing what you're doing, keep that exercise up, keep finding ways to cut back calories in the choices that you make, so that over time that you're digging into your fat stores to lose those fat stores. And over time, give yourself time, give your body time to adapt to that. And listen to your natural hunger cues and fullness cues, and get plenty of rest and watch your stress, and you'll always be moving in the right direction.